Hey guys, POE Noob here. This is a full guide video for Champion Banner Static Strike. It's a follow-up video for the showcasing in my last video. And a lot of people are interested in this build, but there are a lot of details to cover, so I decided to make a guide video. This build heavily invests into banner and Warcries, and as a return from the 3 banners, we get huge movement speed, damage, and tankiness with high uptime. From the Warcries, we also get crazy damage buff, and from the new Infamous mod, skills have 3% base crit chance for each Warcry exertion. We get high base crit chance, so that we can nearly cap our crit chance even with Marilyn's Fallacy Amulet, which gives us 240% crit multi. With such high speed and damage, but relatively low attack speed, Static Strike is the perfect skill for map zooming. You hit once and keep running, and everything around you just dies, and it feels so good. Since Static Strike is a lightning skill, we further fit in Doriani's setup in our Merc to triple our damage. So in the end, our build can hit high DPS, which is between 100 to 150 million DPS, and it is extremely fast. It can have plus 240% movement speed, which makes it efficient for most farming contents. It is also relatively tanky. We have healthy max hit. We also have 100% uptime of capped spell suppression and ailment immune. And during the long fight, we can ramp up other banners, so we have 75% attack block chance and 700 life gain on block. Furthermore, we have 1k to 2k life regen, which is extremely good for low life build. This build is all contents available in an extremely fast way. However, you do need to pay some price for such power. So first of all, only Defiance banner has 100% uptime, so which means that you can have full covered movement speed, spell suppression chance, ailment immune. However, the other 2 banners, which grants block and doubled fist damage, need around 4 seconds to follow after the previous one. This build is extremely tanky for tons of small or medium hits, but giga hits can still one-shot you. You also need some clock in your mind to keep up the banner buffs. Also, like every 20 seconds, you need to press the hybrid flask to trigger the adrenaline. So all in all, it can be not that comfortable to start with, but as you play more and you will get used to it. So if you're still with me, let's dive into it. So first, let's talk about the banners. We use 3 banner skills. So first, Defiance banner, which grants 8% movement speed, 8% spell suppression chance, and minus 13 damage taken from suppressed hits. Dread banner, 4% chance to block attack, and 38 life gain on block. For War banner, 8% accuracy rating and 4% more fizz melee damage. Also, you need to stay in the banner area to get the buff. If you leave, buff is gone. And by default, it has 12 seconds of duration. Well, in our actual build, we have 30 seconds. So from the buff itself, it looks not that impressive at all. However, there are ways to scale the effect. So first of all, it is scaled by Valor. So you need Valor to place the banner, and it is max at 50. So for each Valor spent, it grants 10% more AoE of the area. Also 10% more effect per Valor. So with 50 Valor, it can have 6 times the effect, which means 48% movement speed and spell suppression chance, 24% chance to block, 200 life gain on block, 48% accuracy rating, 24% more fizz melee damage. Besides Valor, we also have banner effect on the skill tree to scale the effect. And also aura effect can also scale the effect because the banner buff is an aura. So what is the actual effect we have in our build? From our investment into the valors, we have a max of 105 max valor, and we get 20% banner effect from the skill tree, and we have 70% aura effect. So in total, we can almost 22x the effect, which means that we can get 175% movement speed, spell suppression chance, and minus 280 damage taken from suppressed hits. Also to mention that with Ancestral Vision Rule, 50% of spell suppression chance apply to chance to avoid ailments, and with the boot implicit chance to avoid ailment, we are immune to them. So we can make good use of the overcapped spell suppression. From Dread Banner, we get 87% chance to block, which is capped at 75%. We also get 830 life gain on block, which is around 38% of the life pool because we are low life and we are at around 2k life. From War Banner, we get 175% accuracy rating, which does nothing for our build, but we still get 87% more fizz melee damage. So now the banner effect is actually huge. But how do we generate max valor for the banners? So about the generation, there are 3 sources. First is the vanilla source, so which you gain 1 valor per melee kill or per hit against rare or unique monsters, no more than every 0.5 seconds, which is pretty slow, and we should never rely on that. We also, from the valor mastery, we can get 5 valor when you Warcry, which is good. And from the champion sanity, when you leave the banner area, you get refund of the 30% of the spent valor. Also from the skill tree, we get 100% increased valor gained, so which means that each Warcry grants 10 valor, and we have 6 Warcries in total with high cooldown recovery, so that we can generate the valor from Warcries really fast. Also, the champion refund, it now refunds 60% valor instead. So which means that when we leave the area, we can get back 62 valor. Here is the showcase. So here is no valor, and when I Warcry, you see we have 10 here. Warcry again, 20. Yeah, so if we enable the auto exertion, so we have 4 Warcries going on, so it fills up really fast, right? And then we place the Defiance banner, and we can see there's a border here, which is pretty big. And then we have no valor, we spend all of them, and when we leave the area, immediately we get 62 back. So now we can generate valors really fast. However, there are a restriction that you cannot gain valor if any banner is active, which means that it is nearly impossible to have multiple banners active at the same time. However, this can be bypassed by 2 sources. One is the unique armor perfidy, which is here. It has having a placed banner does not prevent you from gaining valor. And also the new champion ascendancy also have this. So that's why we chose champion, and we can use a rare armor, which is a huge buff. So now talking about the uptime for the banners. So first of all, we will have 100% uptime for Defiance banner. Defiance banner is the first priority because it gives movement speed, suppression, and also ailment immune, so we should always have it on. The question is, how do we keep the 100% uptime? We will rely on this key skill tree node. Buff lingers 3 seconds after you leave the banner area. And also with the Runegraft, buffs expire 30% slower, so actually this linger time increased from 3 to 4.3 seconds. And this makes it possible to have 100% uptime. So what it means that, so you first place a banner with max valor, and then you run out of the area and it refunds you 62 valor immediately. And then 4.3 seconds is enough to allow 5 Warcries from auto triggered, and you can get max 105 value again, and then you just place the banner and keep the loop running. Let me showcase. Okay, let's just keep running and do nothing. So yeah, it can easily have 100% uptime. Even I didn't have any tattoo for Warcry cooldown. So this is for the running scenario, but what about for the stalling scenario where you need to stay in the same place and have some difficult fight, such as like for bosses, ritual, simulacrum, ultimatum. So first of all, you will always place the Defiance banner first, because the buff there is not negotiable. After you place the Defiance banner, you can manual Warcry to speed up the value generation, and then 4 seconds later you should be able to reach 105 value again, and you can place the next one until all 3 are placed. And then you can have 100% uptime for all 3 banners, and you keep an eye on the skill icon. When it is deactivated, place it again. So this means that there is a ramp up time until all 3 banners are up, but after all of them up, then you have nearly 100% uptime on all of them. But take care when Dread Banner is not up, you are not that tanky without the block chance and block recovery. Now let's talk about Warcries. So why we use Warcries? It provides tons of benefit for our build. So first, the pure exertion effect. From the intimidating cry, we get intimidate on enemies and double damage. From ancestral cry, which is also automated, it makes strike target 2 additional enemies, which is critical for the targeting of the strike skill. For general cry automated, it has a very low cooldown, 3 seconds, whereas for all other Warcries it is 8 seconds. So General Cry is really good for value generation. We also have Infernal Cry automated, and it does not have any benefits but the pure exertion, which can enable other mechanic. And we have a manual Rotting Cry because we need a buff which can add attack damage, and we can get more damage from the exertion. From the Battle Mage Cry, we manual press it. It gives base crit chance, and it can also trigger spell. So here we trigger Molten Shell. Warcries also can help with the value generation as we covered already. So that's why we want to invest into the Warcry cooldown. And also Warcries has synergy with the new infamous Helmet mod, 3% base crit chance per exertion. So we have 5 exertions in total, which means that we have plus 15% base crit. And of course, the over-exertion support, the more Warcry exertions you have, the more damage you get. So from this support alone, it grants 110% more damage. And also from the Rage Mastery, Warcries grant 1 rage per 5 enemy power. So we can always have the 40 rage, which means 40% more damage. So that's all the benefits from Warcries, and the reason why we fit in Warcry in our build. Now let's talk about why we use Static Strike. So first of all, as we mentioned, it is a perfect fit for fast moving, high damage, but low attack speed, because you can just hit once and you just keep running for a few seconds. Also, it is lightning scale, so it can benefit from the broken Doriani's setup. So personally, I actually hate the Doriani's power at such a low cost, but it's there. I think it harms the build diversity. And Static Strike just gives pure dopamine when you fly through the map and everything around you just dies. So be sure you try a dense map with Awaken Chain and more duration support, and you will know what I mean. Okay, let's come to the gear part. So first, about weapon. So we will use the high fizz damage propagator to handle mace. So the implicit here is really important. Warcries exert 2 additional attacks because the intimidating cry can only exert 2 attacks, and from the skill tree it exerts 3, which is not enough, right? It has an 8-second cooldown, and with a cooldown recovery it has 3 or 4 seconds, which is not enough. That's why we need this implicit so that we can keep striking with the intimidating buff, which doubles our damage and also provide other benefits like crit chance. So besides the high DPS there, we prefer some accuracy rating as a plus. By the way, also the attack speed, I think it's good to have there because it does not affect your DPS that much, but it affects how you feel in the mapping. For budget option, if it is too expensive in the market, you can buy a base and use Deafening Essence of Contempt, and until you hit like high tier percent increased fizz or hybrid fizz or attack speed, and then you benchcraft the missing ones. For helmet, so you must have the new Warcry nodes, and I recommend at least 2.7 crit chance or more. And it's better to have a high life or at least open prefix to craft life. And we prefer 1 or more useful mods such as resistance, life regen, accuracy, etc. And for budget option, you can try to find some low roll Warcry mods if it has some other really good mods and it is cheap enough, and you can use divine yourself. So you expect to spend average 3 divines to hit above the 2.7% crit. For implicit, we get reduced mana cost for attacks and mana reservation. Body armor, so we need a high armor base and roll at least 3k armor. No life mod is okay, so you can get the 15% increased max life from the mastery. And we prefer fizz reduction in the mods and T1 life regen if possible. For budget option, you can buy a non-6 link good road one and use Morrigan Beast to 6 link it, which is around 1 divine. Or you can buy the eye level 86 6 link Royal Plate, which is 1.5 divines right now, and you can roll with Essence or Harvest. For implicit, get aura effect and fist taken as LA. Gloves, get T1 or T2 life, chaos or element rest. Get accuracy if your weapon does not have. Attack speed is actually not desired here. You can skip. Preferred if you can get up to 50% increased damage against chilled enemies, which also grants you like high cold resistance. For implicit, get crit chance for attacks and accuracy rating if you have issues, or otherwise get exert attack increased damage. For boots, get T1 or T2 life, chaos, early res, onslaught on kill, and for implicit, get action speed and chance to avoid ailments. So this is important to be ailment immune. Amulet, get Marilyn's Fallacy, and try to get to 40% crit multi, which is cheap now. Do not catalyst crit mods because it's just not worth it. Anoint Charisma for a mana reservation. For first ring, get Circle of Guilt, which gives you 20% more DPS. And for the mod, get Herald of Purity buff effect and increased fizz damage while affected by Herald of Purity. And for implicit, get at least 2+ useful mods such as resistance, accuracy, mana regen, increased fizz or lightning damage, etc. And use physical catalyst on it. For budget, so if you have too much pressure on accuracy, resistance, attribute from other gear slots, then here probably you can use a rare ring instead, so that you lose 20% of the DPS. For second ring, get T1, T2 life, fix as much resistance as possible, and leave an open prefix to craft the minus mana cost for non-channeling skills. Prefer increased elemental damage with attacks, but it might be really expensive. And you can use resistance catalyst on it. For belt, this is a very versatile slot, and it can have a lot of options. You can swap for different farmings. So first of all, if you still have pressure on accuracy resistance attributes, here you might use a rare Stygian belt, and you can get high life, increased elemental damage, armor, resistance. However, if you do not have such pressure, you can use unique belts. So for aggressive option, you can have a well-rolled Restlatha's coil. For defensive, you can have Immortal Flesh if resistance is not an issue. Or you can have Headhunter. For fast mapping, you can use the Flow Untethered, which can grant you 10% action speed. And for GG, for endgame, you can have Mage Blood. For draws, first we will have Light of the Meaning. You can have a fist damage, but it's very expensive. So you can have a lightning damage, which should be around 2 div. For Watcher size, since we are affected by determination and the vitality from the Merc, and we run precision ourselves, so you can get useful mods for the 3 auras. And we will definitely need Ancestral Vision to cap our ailment avoidance. And for rare jewels, we'll get Life, Crit Multi, increased damage, or fix your res attribute issues if there is any. Prefer to get a double mods balance of terror for either temporal chains or enfeeble. If it is too expensive, by the way, I bought mine for 30C. If it's too expensive, use a rare jewel. It's probably not that worth it to have a single mod there. But if you are farming Simulacrum specifically, you can get a 1 mod temporal chain. Active speed cannot below base value mod, because Simulacrum has the ground that reduces your action speed like crazy. For cluster jewels, have a 8-node large cluster, and you must have the Fuel the Fight for the mana leech. And you need 3 notables in total, but you only allocate 2, and to save 2 points there. Make sure the other one is useful. For medium cluster, you really need the 2 important nodes. One is Mob Mentality, which can grant you like all the charges, 100% uptime, which is critical. And also the Warning Call, which can grant you 100% increased armor. If you have both mod on the same cluster roll, it can be very expensive and very hard to roll. If you buy it, you need 10 divines. So if you are rich, try to get both. Otherwise, get 2 clusters, one with Mob Mentality plus Provocator, and the other with Warning Call plus Provocator. For Flasks, so first, Hybrid Hollowed Flask, which is needed to trigger the Adrenaline, because we get Adrenaline for 20 seconds when we reach low life, but we are already low life, so you can only use Flask to recover above the low life threshold, and then you use some skill which costs life, and then you go back down to low life and you get the buff. But it's a very reliable way, so you press and you nearly 100% guaranteed to get the adrenaline buff. It is also used to support the tincture, which burn your mana. So for prefix, you get effect not removed when mana filled, so this can make the tincture last longer. Suffix, immune to bleed and corrupted blood if you do not have that on your jewel. Then we have a prismatic tincture, and you can get increased effect and crit multi. So here I have the increased mana burn rate, but if you need a higher uptime, you can avoid this mod. We also use quartz flask for mapping. It is mandatory for mapping, and you craft 3% life regen, and enchant with use on full. Then endowment flask with increased crit chance during effect. You can either enchant use when reach full or when hitting rare or unique enemy. For granite, you will have increased armor during effect, and then enchant use on reach full. Optionally, you can also use sulfur flask for consecrated ground, quicksilver flask for even faster speed, or some more expensive unique options such as Progenesis or Wine of the Prophet. Okay, now for the Merc. So you can use Earthshaker, Reaper, or Striker because they all provide determination and vitality, which is critical for our defense. We prefer Earthshaker because it can hold two-handed axe, so you can fit in Kingmaker. As mentioned, it must have determination and vitality, and that's all. For the gears, so first of all, definitely most important, Doriani's setup plus 3 negative lightning rest rings and amulet. For glove, we use Hand of Hersey, which make enemies cannot deal chaos damage. For belt, chaos binding, convert enemy 25% fist to fire. And then other slots just to improve the survivability of your Merc. Preferred if you can anoint additional curse on the amulet, and then some curse on hit glove. Now let's get into the skills. So mostly you can just follow the POB, and all the skills are displayed there. But I would like to add some notes here. So first of all, we have 4 Warcries auto-exerted, and 2 of them are manual. So the manual Warcries first is Running Cry because it can buff with grant added damage, and the Battle Mage Cry can buff which grant base crit chance. And for all the other 4, we auto-exerted them. And then make sure the auto-exerted Warcries to be level 1 to save your mana cost. And then Battle Mage Cry can also trigger spells when you hit enemy with the exertion. We link to Modem Shell to auto-trigger Modem Shell. You may ask why not link to a curse like Enfeeble or anything. The reason is because the mana cost for the curse is really high. And if every attack will trigger a curse, you cannot afford that mana cost. So for the curse, it can be either Temp Chains or Enfeeble. You may think about punishment, but it is actually really not that beneficial for your DPS. I do not recommend it. For support, do not use Shockwave support because it does not benefit from the exertions and the base crit. Means that it added very low damage. Now talk about the reason why we go low life with Petrified Blood. First reason is because we can use together with the Hybrid Flask and can easily trigger the Adrenaline. So Adrenaline is really a good buff that grants you 100% increased damage, 30% attack speed, movement speed, and most importantly 10% fist damage reduction. But here is an important note is that make sure your reserved life is slightly less than half of the life pool. Just like in my case, right? The reserved is very slightly lower than half of the pool here. Because as previously we explained, you need your life pool to go above the half threshold and then go down. How you can achieve this is that you can tune the precision level and the arrogance support level. Second reason is because with such huge life regen and life gain on block, Petrified Blood will just double those effectiveness. And also, Petrified Blood makes precision more affordable because our mana pool is so low. It's only around 700. If you reserve your mana for that, it is just too much. For our passive tree, for ascendancy, so we definitely get the 4 points for the banners, and then 2 points for fortitude, so we can save the fortify support gem or fortification branch here. We can save a lot of passive points, and then we get 2 points for adrenaline. It is too good to not have. For tattoos, we have at least 1 attack damage listed as life if you don't have that in your large cluster draw. And then you can use the tattoos to fix any resistance issues. It's preferred if you can afford the Warcry cooldown tattoos on your strength nodes, but it is 1D each, kind of expensive. For Pantheon, since we are freeze immune and stun immune, we can just go soul of Lunaris and soul of Growth Call. Some notes for the passive tree. So this build is super point starving because we need too many points on the banner and Warcry nodes, which means that if you can save a 1 medium cluster by having both mob mentality and wanting call in one duel, you can save 4 precious points. And also, like for bandits, kill all to get 1 precious point and a level as high as you can, so that because each point is a huge improvement. And do not allocate the rounding icon because it will buff the Merc with 300% LD res, which means that the Doriani setup will actually reduce your damage. And also here, from the POB, it does not show correctly. It is not Warcry cannot exert travel skills, but it is a Runegraft of buffs on you expire 30% slower. So this is huge for mapping, which makes the lingering buff when you leave the banner area from 3 seconds to nearly 4.3 seconds. And finally, make sure you have a good max hit. For example, 20k plus Fizz max hit and 45k LD hit. If it is too low, you can respec some damage node and go for more defensive points such as life, max res, endurance charges. For mana management, so first of all, mana leech is mandatory, so you have to get the feel the fight node from the large cluster, and make sure all exerted Warcries are level 1 so that it will cost 2 mana, or it will cost 1 mana if you use Life Catalyst on your ring so that it can minus 8 mana cost instead of 7. And make sure the static strike should cost around 2 mana, and you should have 60 plus unreserved mana. If you can get some flat mana regen as a plus from the Reigns or Abyss jewels. As a red button, you also have the hybrid flask with effect not removed when mana filled, which is initially intended to make tinctures last longer. For mapping, if you are feeling kind of squishy, I recommend you can take the node that monsters deal 25% less damage and have 50% more life, because for regular content our damage is just good enough. For mods, you can now do LD Reflect until you have the level 5 awakened LD attack support. Also, there are some feel bad mods such as no regen, so you can still use your hybrid flask and you have life and mana leech, but it just does not feel good. And aura effect is definitely awful, and the cooldown recovery is awful, and buff expires feels bad. So about the POBs, I will link 3 POB versions in the description. So first one is the minimum requirement, which you might need 20 or 30 divines depending on the market. It can reach 85% million DPS and around 80k HP. And also I linked my current POB, which I spend with 40 divines, but it might worth 80 divines now. It has 108 million DPS and 85k HP. I also linked an endgame POB with Mage Blood. I don't know the cost exactly, but It can have 160 million DPS and 124k EHP. And also, it's quite different skill setup, and there is no petrified blood. The Merc gears are in the drop down of the item set menu. Feel free to check it. If you are planning your gears via POB, make sure to uncheck the war banner because it buffs your accuracy, but you should make sure you cap your hit chance without the war banner buff. Also uncheck the aura from Merc skills so that you know your unreserved mana. Make sure it's more than 60 mana. So before you buy the gears, first price check, especially the expensive pieces such as the Warcry mod helmet, negative lightning res rings and amulet, balance of terror for double mods, which is not mandatory to be honest, and the medium cluster if you want to have the both important node on the same cluster, which can cost you 10 divines. And then do not one-to-one copy, it can cost you mirrors. And with low budget, like less than 30 divines, I recommend use a rare belt, which can largely mitigate the pressure on other slots. But if high budget, do not rely on belt for any resistance or attribute fixing, and then you can use unique belts instead. This is recommended because you can freely swap between different belts for different farming contents. For leveling, you can reference any melee fizz two-handed weapon leveling, and there should be tons on the YouTube. Sunder is an example. And then you can switch to this build after probably level 75 to 80. And for skill points, you should prioritize the banner and the Warcries first, and then in the order of importance, try to get life, and then rage, crit, cluster, charges, and max res. Okay, so that's all about the build. Ask in the comment if you have any questions. Some final thoughts here. So first of all, champion banner, I think it is a very powerful backbone for many different melee skills. You can build differently, and you actually do not need much change to switch between them. For example, you can have crit version or non-crit version, ally or fizz. Like for fizz, you can have impale earth shatter, which is quite strong. You can also have other strikes or slams. You can build differently on top of it. And also do not forget the 1 billion DPS face breaker that I posted in my last video, which get quite popular. Also, champion banner might not be that comfortable to start with, especially that how to keep up the banner, how to keep in mind about the buff time. But it feels good when you are used to it. Static Strike is kind of underestimated in my point of view for how enjoyable and efficient it is for mapping. And this version is stronger than my previous Slayer Ambush Static Strike in many ways. But without Merc, I don't know which one is stronger. Okay, one last thing I forgot to mention is that I recommend a MTX for the Defiance banner. If without it, like you cast it and the border is really not that visible, so you do not know when you go out of the area. But if you buy this demonic eye banner skin, and then on the Defiance banner, and then it is much more visible. Okay, it's pay to win game. Just kidding. Okay, that's everything. Thanks for watching and enjoy the game.